Yeah, I think generally for some reason there's still some stigma around top lane where people sort of just think of it as a role that just 1v1s a lot of the game. But I
Hmm.
actually think that at least recent years in competitive, or even like the recent year in competitive, top lane is actually one of the roles that's most affected by your teammates. And if you have uh, good champions or a good plan to like punish top lane, I think it actually is the most punishing as well.
This is Azento from Esports Heaven, and I have here with me Fudge from Cloud9, victorious against Golden Guardians in a pretty convincing game, I would say. And I just want to start off the bat talking about your record that you just settled, which is you are now tied with Impact for the biggest gold lead in LCS history for any lane ever. How do you feel about that?
I did not know about that record. I remember watching the game EG versus Dignitas, right? And it was Impact versus Fake God. It was kind of funny to watch because top lane was like 29 CS at like 8 minutes or something for Fake God. I felt really bad for him because obviously he was really far behind, couldn't really do much at that point. But I mean, it's really interesting. I didn't feel like I was that far ahead actually at like 15 minutes, but I guess I was. It's kind of crazy.
So I want to get your thoughts on that top dive. So that was one of the worst top dives I've ever seen, but it wasn't even like really a mechanical misplay, at least that I saw from them, but from the outset. But what were your thoughts around that play, I guess?
So about like 40 seconds before that play, I realized that they were trying to get mid priority so that they could dive top with a stacking wave on Renekton. And many teams do this. Like it's almost become like very normal to like stack waves, dive top really easily. Like almost every single game if this happens. So I called Vulcan or anyone that could really help me to run top. And Vulcan obviously had a timer to be able to run top and defend the top dive, and we were able to defend it really well. I think they didn't really take into account that Thresh could run top, so they went for the dive expecting a 1v3 because they saw a jungler and mid laner, and they ended up getting really far behind off of that, obviously, because they got a triple kill.
Yeah.
Like a double kill, I guess. I'm actually not sure if I got a triple kill then.
So I guess I want to touch on that idea of you calling up, help from someone because many people are pointing towards your strengths this year and the fact that you're actually looking like the best Cloud9 player and even like one of the front runners for maybe an MVP if possible. And I guess what areas have you say that you've improved on as far as yourself and your skills? Because many people maybe point towards the possibility of communication. Obviously, wave management has been something that people have touted. So what in your opinion is the biggest improvement for you?
Um, I think not just my biggest improvement, but also my biggest strength right now compared to the other top laners is that I set up waves really, really well for my teammates. Whether it's my jungler, mid laner, or support rooms. And I think that I call what they will do in advance, like pretty far in advance in general. So we generally defend really well around top lane whenever it's their timing, and the enemy teams generally don't really defend that well around their top laners, like what our timing is.
Mm.
So I feel like a lot of the time we either get a gank off. For example, this game I bounced the wave and then we obviously ganked Renekton in a really good timing. I ended up actually misplaying that sequence where I should have told Blabber to actually push out with me because I had no teleport, and then I ended up dying to Renekton. And also obviously the time when Vulcan ran top, which was really good by him to defend me. And I think that generally either it's like mainly like the timings. I mean, my wave management, of course, I think is a lot better than a lot of other top laners right now, and also telling my teammates what timing I need, like or what timing I need them to come top to possibly punish the top laner or defend me. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's generally the thing I've improved at the most. And I think that was also one of my biggest weaknesses relative to the other top laner back in lock-in, where I was getting behind a lot because the enemy top laners would just slow push, dive top, and then I'd get really far behind in matchups that are generally pretty volatile. So, yeah.
So I want to touch on that entire subject as far as communication and maybe wave management communication in that aspect, which is that generally I think a lot of people think of top lane as like the lane of isolation, to where it's just the 1v1. It's macho. But maybe that might be a misconception in that aspect, especially when you're going into pro play.
Hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about the idea of transitioning from pro play and solo queue play, and maybe there seemingly might be a disconnect in terms of the communication aspect?
Yeah, I think generally for some reason there's still some stigma around top lane where people sort of just think of it as a role that just 1v1s a lot of the game. But I
Mm-hmm.
actually think that at least recent years in competitive, or even like the recent year in competitive, top lane is actually one of the roles that's most affected by your teammates. And if you have uh, good champions or a good plan to like punish top lane, I think it actually is the most punishing as well, because generally it's very hard to help a top laner when you're really far behind. Um, and also it's a lot easier to kill the enemy top laner because they don't have as many summoner spells and also defensive spells as like bot lane usually does. And I actually think that in recent years it seems like every region is sort of playing around top lane way more, whereas like previously it would be a lot about like mid, jungle, bot lane.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think top lane is very, very impactful now. So um, even when I was playing against like RNG, for example, at MSI, I realized that like playing around top lane is like really, really impactful, and it's really, really hard to defend against unless you're very like prepared or practiced against it. So yeah.
Okay. So I want to jump onto maybe the team aspect of Cloud9, because you guys had been struggling a little bit before, but now you've kind of accrued some wins on the board again and whatnot. But I want to touch on the overall idea, or maybe the philosophy of too many cooks in the kitchen, and the fact that the Cloud9 staff has, all these big names. You have Reignover, you have Mithy, you have Max Waldo, like, etc. But that, and from the outside perspective, may look like there is too many cooks, and especially with veteran names like Perks on the lineup or Sven on the lineup, to where maybe there's too many conflicting ideas. Like, what would you maybe say to that narrative?
I think that when it comes to the overall team, um, Max Waldo and Veigar, um, in general don't like they don't talk to the team about very like overarching concepts as much. I think it's generally them going to play as one-on-one. Whereas in team review after the scrim games, it's generally Mithy and Reignover that are talking to the players.
Mm.
Um, and I do think that there is like like a solid argument that like, oh, maybe they see the game in a different way, the coaches. But I do think that it's not really about how you see the game, but whether or not like uh, who's actually backing up their uh, reasoning with the most substance and most argument, like evidence. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that there are many different I think that some coaches excel at other things, whereas I mean, obviously some coaches are better at one thing than others, and I think that's it's not really about having too many cooks in the kitchen, as whereas it's like more that some people are more informed about certain aspects of the game
Mm.
than others.
And I mean, to go on that idea, of course there is the idea of too many cooks in the kitchen, but then of what you say of, who has the most salient point, so to speak. But then I feel like you could come into the aspect of, well, maybe it's taking too long to come to a conclusion about a particular subject. So,
Hmm.
how do you solve that when everyone has maybe the status to back that up, etc.?
It's obviously very hard to solve, I think, actually. I think we've been struggling to find conclusions to the reason why we're losing. And obviously there's uh there's obviously a lot of problems with our team right now, right? So um I think the coaches have been working together, and I don't think it's almost like um maybe the narrative is that they're like against each other, which I think is completely untrue. And I think that we've all been working together to find like the reason behind our losses and what we actually need to do in practice to make practice more efficient and fix these problems. So um I think in the future, um, we'll have to find the problems way faster than we did, I think, early in the split. And I still think that we have so many problems. Like when it comes to maybe like the public might feel like, oh, we're playing better, but I think that's not even necessarily true. I think we're just playing against much worse teams
Mm.
than previous weeks. And I think that if we go back into the trap of, oh, we're getting better now, and then like, oh, we start relaxing again, I think it's like really bad. I think we should still be looking for all the issues, because even in this game against Golden Guardians, I really misplayed top lane, like by not helping, like telling my jungler to push out. We like
Mm.
misplayed in mid lane. We got like quadra killed. There were like so many problems with the way we're playing. And if we're, for example, if we're like an LPL team, we would finish the game in 15 minutes. But we made this
Yeah.
game a 25-minute game, right? So
Mm-hmm.
um, I think it's very easy to get into this trap that we're like, oh, getting better, or like there's like solution, or like the problems are being solved. But I think that's not necessarily true.
Okay, well, you guys came out victorious, so happy with that, and happy to see Cloud9 get the win and the W and be on the come up. So, looking forward to your next games and the upcoming week. This has been Azento from Esports Heaven and Fudge from Cloud9. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.